Now, as a database, I will use MongoDB here, and to be precise, I'll use their cloud offering, MongoDB Atlas, which is a fully managed, cloud-based MongoDB database with which we can get started for free. All you need to do is click Try Free. This will then get you to MongoDB Atlas in the end, and create an account for free here. So just enter some data about yourself and then get started for free. If you do all of that, after logging in, you'll end up on a page where you can create a new cluster. You might also automatically end up in that Create a Cluster wizard. And here you can generally leave all the settings as they are. Just make sure that you always pick the free tier settings unless you want to pay. So for example, you can go with AWS and the default region here, and leave all the other default settings as well. Especially make sure that you're using the M0 sandbox here. I can't select this here because I already do have a cluster created based on that sandbox, but if you don't have a cluster yet, you should be able to select M0 sandbox. And that is the cluster tier you should use then. And then just leave all the other default settings and create your cluster. Again, I already have one based on that M0 sandbox here, and therefore you eventually should also have one. Now that's the cluster, the MongoDB database cluster, which we'll use to connect to then create our database in there and to store our data in there. Now, in order to be able to connect to this cluster, there are two things you also have to do here in this MongoDB Atlas console. Under network access, you have to add your local IP here by clicking on Add IP address and then selecting Current IP, so that your local computer is able to send requests to MongoDB. And under database access, you need to create at least one user with any username of your choice who has to have read and write access to the database, like this user here does, so that this is a user with which we can connect to this cluster later. And once you did all of that, on clusters, you can click on Connect and then connect your application to learn how you can connect to this cluster. And here we now actually need to use the Node.js MongoDB driver to write code here in our API route that does send queries to this MongoDB Atlas cluster. For this, we need to quit the development server and install an extra package with npm install, the MongoDB package. This is the official MongoDB driver, which makes sending queries to MongoDB easy. Once you installed it, you can start the development server again. And now this MongoDB driver allows us to connect to this cluster and then insert data or fetch data from there. For this, in this API route file, we can import something from MongoDB, and that something is the Mongo client object. This is an object which allows us to connect. We can execute this code here. We can use Mongo client and call the connect method here. Now the connect method wants this connection string, which we have here. So you should copy that string and then pass this as a parameter here to the connect method. Now there you need to plug in the username and password of your user. So that user who has read and write access which you created. And I'll quickly do this without the angle brackets, like this. Now I will have changed my password when you're viewing this, so you don't need to try to connect to my cluster. You also should replace my first database with any database name of your choice, for example, meetups, but that is up to you. Now when you do that, connect will establish a connection. And this is code which you never want to run on the client side, because you would expose your credentials to your visitors, which is a security problem. But here in this API route, it's no problem because, as I mentioned before, the code defined in here will never end up on the client side. So this is a secure place to store credentials. Now connect does return a promise, and hence we can turn our handler function into an async function to use await. This is possible and supported by Next.js. And then this will give us a connected client eventually. Now on that client object, we can call the DB method to get hold of that database to which we're connecting here. By the way, if that database doesn't exist yet, it will be created on the fly. And then on this database, we can get access to our meetups collection. Now, MongoDB is a NoSQL database that works with collections full of documents. Collections would be kind of your tables in a SQL database, and documents would be your entries in those tables. So you have collections which hold multiple documents, and a single meetup would be a single document. The overall collection then holds multiple meetups, multiple meetup documents. And you get hold of a collection by using your database and then the collection method. And the collection can have any name of your choice. Just as the database, if it doesn't exist yet, it will be generated on the fly. And it could be named meetups as well. So it can have the same name as the database, but you can also use different names here. And now that we got hold of the meetups collection, on that collection here we can call insert1, which is one of the built-in query commands for inserting one new document into this collection. And now the great thing about MongoDB is that a document is just an object in the end, a JavaScript object. And that now could be an object with title, image, address, and description. And since that's the case, since that would make a lot of sense, we can also just directly insert data, so this full data object, into our database. And hence, of course, we don't even need to use destructuring here. Now we would insert this data object into the database. Now this also is an async operation. Insert1 returns a promise, and hence we can await this here as well to get back the result of this operation. Result will be an object with, for example, the automatically generated ID. We can console log result here if we want to. Now we can also add error handling here to handle the case that connecting failed or inserting failed. And I do this in the full course, but here let's keep this focused and concise and let's simply assume that it will work. You can simply use try catch to wrap this to add error handling if you want to. Now I want to call client close then to close the database connection once we're done. And then we need to use this response object to send back a response. Because we're getting a request, we're then storing data in the database. Ultimately, we also need to send back a response then. And we do this with this response object. Now this works similar to what you might be used to from Node Express. You have a status method, which you can call on response, to set a HTTP status code of the response which will be returned. For example, a 201 status code to indicate that something was inserted successfully. You can then chain a JSON call here to prepare the JSON data that will be added to the outgoing response. And here we could, for example, add a message key where we say meetup inserted. But of course, it's totally up to you which kind of response you want to return. With that, however, we have a basic API route which will insert meetups into our database. And therefore, in the next step, we can now send a request to this API route from the front end when this form here is submitted, so that we actually do trigger this API route and we use that code here.